Right, this time, Linus, would you please come up? Please come forward. Linus Nauer, advisor to the Ocean Bowl team. Andy, would you come up too, please?
You want some here?
Right out front. Before we do the pledge and introduce the Ocean Bowl team, I just would like to get a little recognition for our advisor, Linus Nauer. The Harvard Club interviews hundreds of applicants for consideration or acceptance into the club each year. During these interviews, the Harvard Club hears about many wonderful teachers with students and parents. It's the goal of the Harvard Club of Long Island to honor outstanding educators and ask current Harvard undergraduates to nominate the teachers who made the greatest difference in their lives. This year, Linus Nauer, who has been recognized by the Harvard Club of Long Island, is one of only 12 teachers that has received the club's Distinguished Teacher Award at the Harvard Club's University Relations Fund on April 15th. Congratulations, Linus. At this time, we call upon the students of the Ocean Bowl to come forward, please. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Hello, everybody. I don't know what you know about the Ocean Bowl team, but this is a very special team, of which three of our seniors this year will be leaving us. But I have to say that they were phenomenal. In February 3rd, they actually was #1 in the state, which allowed us to go to Colorado, which is why we have the shirts. In April, what ended up happening, they had to work on a SEB, which is a science briefing. That was a very big document and go in front of a government board. And it turned out they scored 6th in the country on their SEB, or the school science briefing. And they then scored 8th overall. And it's very grueling. You go school after school. There was actually over 300 schools that competed to get to Colorado. So I'd like to introduce the team. First of all, the one who organized for the whole year, not just academically, through the summer, are Claire Dana, who's really the person in charge. Okay, Josh Goodman, who actually also is #3 in his senior class, so he's our class poet. He joined us this year, and we couldn't have won without you. Okay, Julia, who started freshman year with us, right? Yeah, she's also in her top 10. Next year. Ariel, who is presently a sophomore, actually competed last year as a freshman, has a legacy with her brother from years ago, wherever he's out there. Okay, they also won. And of course, last but not least, is Jonathan, who our valedictorian of the senior class. We miss you guys, but we're going to do it again next year.
Okay, we're going to do the approval of the minutes. Lynn, would you mind doing that, please?
Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby accepts the minutes of the May 8, 2018 public budget hearing / regular meeting, the May 15, 2018 annual budget board election, and the May 24, 2018 workshop meeting as submitted.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Bob. Any comment? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. I'm going to skip down to the tenure appointments because we have a baby getting tenure tonight, a baby's family. So, Bob, if you would please do well.
Thank you. Tenure appointments. Tenure appointment, William Chilton. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby grants tenure as follows to William Chilton. Social Studies. Date of tenure, August 29, 2018. Certification initial.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Mike? Congratulations. Welcome aboard.
Tenure appointment, David Hershey. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby grants tenure as follows. David Hershey, physical education, date of tenure, August 29, 2018, professional.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Welcome to the Mount Sinai family.
All of you.
Yes, and I know you'd love to stay, but you don't have to. You're welcome to leave right now if you wish. Stay if you want. Thank you. Good night. All right, we're now flipping back up to the superintendent's report.
Right, the board join me below. Candace is on.
You start helping and I'll really get into trouble. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for coming. Last board meeting we had, we were talking about the vote in May. We've had the vote. And I'd like to say thank you very much for passing the budget and the accompanying propositions. Budget's Proposition 1. Proposition 2 is the library. Proposition 3 is the capital project. You know, we've talked about the bond, but the things that needed to be repaired, improved, and couldn't wait for 2.5 years for a bond to happen. So the board decided to take $5 million from fund balance to not cost the taxpayers a thing. The money was there, and it was going to be used to repair the roof in the high school, create a new turf field and surrounding areas, remove the track pieces out of that field, put them further out into another area, new bleachers, new press box, new cement work, and we had a picture of that field, but it should look like this. Here's a projected picture. Much less cluttered than the past field. Our field is 15 years old. It's a safety issue for our kids. We'll probably not pass the concussion test this fall. No one goes, you talk to other superintendents in other districts, no one goes 15 years on a turf field. Fortunately, we got this much out. And you see the surrounding improvement, the concrete work, and those nets, those fences you see inside have nets, so you can actually use the track and use the field at the same time. So two sports can be active at the same time on that field. Also, in addition to the roof and the new field, we talked about the need for security perimeter fencing. You're probably very well aware of what's lacking on North Country Road at this point. Postal rail was good in 1992. Postal rail doesn't make it today in 2018. We need security fencing on that perimeter. And then if I'm side by the elementary school playground and the post office, our fencing looks like this, trampled down into the dirt. We've had issues in the past with homeless in the woods right next to the district and had to work very hard to remove them. And that makes you very nervous and upset when you have that issue and no fencing and no protection. Again, this is the conditions of our fences in the district. Any security company you talk to, anyone who's done an assessment will tell you the first thing you did. Now, we have armed guards already. What they tell you is your perimeter fencing has to be safe. The fencing and the gates. And this is, again, the art rooms in the high school. And unfortunately, PPS and that wing gets drowned as well. And these are the art room ceilings. They have to be fixed. And that money only includes 1/3 of that ceiling at this point, the rooftop. Now, the interesting thing about that Proposition 3 and the $5 million from the fund balance reduces that fund balance. And speaking of that, we'd like to flash back January and February. We spent considerable time talking about fund balance and addressing it. People wondering how did it get to that size, what happens, how does it happen? And then we were analyzing it, breaking it down to city. Well, how far apart was the actual budget from actual expenses? What was underspent? Underspent's not necessarily a bad thing. You've got to keep in mind, some of you weren't there when we do the 5-year plan. We don't really know until April what our definite numbers are. Prior to that, it's guessing. Prior to that, it's posting numbers. Our directors give us feedback, and we react to those numbers and try to create a budget. Trying to guess what the state's going to provide us in a tax rate and what they're going to give us in state aid. Okay? And so it's guesswork. It's much like every year I have to bring up special education with the fact that there is no budget in special ed. You can't. Because the director gives us a figure, that's what we post. Some people think we actually post a budget for special ed. We don't. That's her estimate in cost based on our enrollment and what the services will cost next year. Now, that can change entirely by a young man or young woman moving into the district and need a lot of services and $150,000, $200,000 of services, and that is no longer our budget. You can never budget or plan in special education. So if you see a figure there, that's from the director. That's based on number of kids we have in special education, current services, how many of them are enrolled in BOCES, but that could change at any time. So there's no budget for special education. So what happened? In 13-14, in our fund, the budget was $55 million. We actually spent 52. A lot of the principals, directors didn't spend all the money, so it's 4.6 under budget. For 55 million, that's not bad. In 2014-15, we were 2.2 apart from what the budget was and what we actually spent. In 15-16, it was 5, and 5.6 and 17. Linda, at some point in March, usually, tells the principals and directors, if you haven't spent it by now, spend it, because otherwise I'm closing it off. And that money is saved. Usually by March, a principal or director should have bought the things they really needed and the top priorities. So that's, how does fund balance happen? You don't spend the whole budget that you plan. You don't spend it. It goes into fund balance. Also, reflecting on the fund balance, what revenue did you receive? I just mentioned. We present in January. We don't have all the definitive numbers in January. We don't have that really until April from the state. So, we project again. Now we plan the budget, 55,155. We get our actual revenues from the state, And look at how over the revenues were, only 0.4%. That's pretty close, tremendously close. 14-15, 54,955, actual revenues 55,341, 0.7%. The next year, 0.17, and 16-17, only 0.6 apart. Projecting the budget, what you get in actual revenues, that's pretty close. I think Linda does a great job of that. This year, we'll know shortly what the 17-18 actual revenues were. But when you save money, when you get more revenue than you spend, that goes into fund balance. That's how it grows and accumulates. Now, Linda, you might want to join with this. In Newsday, the other day, they said in fund balance we have 16.6 million, which isn't true, and we'll show you why. What did we say when we tell the state orders what we had? We had 9.9. What they did was they took 1.6 million, which we assigned appropriate for the next time, and they added our reserve funds. Linda, you want to tell what reserve funds we have?
Our reserves are for EBLR, which is our employee benefits accrued liability, and that's about $3.4 million. And then we have a reserve for employees' retirement system, and that's about $1.4 million. And then we also have workers' compensation reserve, and that's about $202,000.
So that's the 5.13 million. Can I spend that money?
No.
No, that's reserves. We can't touch that money. So, to create an impression for some reason, instead of the actual 9.9, the state, the Newsday wanted to print out we had 16.6. Not true. We have 9.9, and we'll show you how that happened in a moment. Okay? But you need to understand, every district has reserves you can't touch. For retirement systems to plan on the retirees, you can't touch those funds. But it makes great news stories and great Facebook. It's all good. Now, what are the state orders? And I got to tell you, and I said it before in another meeting, Lynn Cappo was there with us, and we had a great meeting with the auditors. And they said, you guys are in pretty good shape. You're not bad compared to a lot of districts. It's very congenial, very open, and we hope that they would listen to our plan, what we plan on doing to spend down the fund balance, as well as just saying, no, the fund balance is too high. If you read that Newsday story, you'll see that 29 districts on Long Island have more than 4%. Is Steve Kepper here tonight? Steve?
He's right there.
Sorry, Steve. Steve works in Sayville. Steve presented in December about our bond, to give you an introduction to the bond. Steve, is it good really to hang to 4% or below in the fund balance?
It's almost borderline irresponsible. You're expecting to have such a tight number that if anything happens, you're done. And it's, in my mind, it's worse to be at that point of zero overspending, the border of overspending, than to be prudent and frugal and say, hey, we did a great job, we saved some money. The 4% is an unrealistic number.
We spent down the fund balance last time. Every 5 years you get audited. It wasn't we were in big trouble, so suddenly the auditors show up. Every 5 years, every district does. And most districts are over the 4%. What happens if you're a little over? They write you a letter. But before that, you'll get a letter that says you're at risk. You're at financial risk. We received one when we downed our fund balance too fast. And when you see our 5-year plan, I'll guarantee you I get another letter that says, whoa, you're at risk now. And we'll be above 4%. Lynn has also pointed out that the state is deciding on if they should raise it to 6. So a lot of the stuff that the auditors tell you, oh, you're over 4%, then you're probably pretty safe going out into the future. 4% each year. I mean, you have to look at this study of Eastport South Manor, how in 4 or 5 years, how they went from a $21 million fund balance to virtually nothing. And they just accessed 78 people. We interviewed a number of them here. So, basically, to simply put it, the state said, budget tighter. Appropriations from fund balance that you take out of your bank account, the 9.9 million, take out less. the fund balance should be equal to or less than 4%. It's a little small for you to see, but I'll try to be very clear. Budget tighter. So if you look at the top line, if you can see it, you'll see actually 16, 17, the increase in the budget was 2.3. 17, 18 was 2.1 increase. Next year, our budget is the smallest in 3 years, increase at 1.57. What do they tell us? Be tighter. Budget tighter. Next year, you'll see we're at 0.50. That's budgeting tighter. Okay? Appropriate less money. If you look at the numbers, and that's the 1 to the third line down on the revenues, you'll see in 16, 17 is 1.5, 17, 18 is 1.6. Next year's budget is 1,275,000. Okay? Now, that's less than the previous 2 years, so we're appropriating less. Well, then you might say, well, look at 1920, you're going up. But our bonds are being paid up. For the high school, this building is finally paid after 25 years. And so we get more money when we have the bond, state aid. So we get less aid because we don't have the bond. So we have to appropriate a little more. Look at the following year, down to 1 million. So what do? We're appropriating less as we go forward. Now, what was the third point? Look on the bottom, the fund balance. Now notice, that's not millions of dollars, that's percent. So don't get those confused. 16, 17, we're at 16.7% in the fund balance. Yes, that's large. That's why we presented in January and February and addressed the fund balance. Now, by putting in, if you look next to appropriated capital project, I pointed that before, that's Proposition 3. That's the 5 million. And it's 5 million. Why do you have 955? Because we appropriated 750 for capital reserves. In case something goes crazy, we need to fix it. We ask the public, we have the money inside. It's not going to cost you. Can we spend it to fix that? We still have to ask your permission. But we put that aside. And then 205,000 from ERS, which we can take money from. And so to put it at that. So what happens when we take that 595? The 16.7 from 16-17 school year now becomes 8%. It cuts the fund balance in half in 1 year.
That's 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from now. Okay? What happens 18-19? Our fund balance is 6.1. Now we start seeing the 4 number, 4.8. And then 2021, we're under 4 in our reserves. State told us to do it. Now again, we're not sure, as these years point out, but this is what we're attempting to do. Budget tighter, appropriate less, and get near the 4%. So we had to create a 5-year plan, which we shared with the state, to show them we're spending down. So Newsday, you didn't include any of this. You said we have 16.6 million. When in fact, you can see how it diminishes there. Okay? So that is the plan. And we are abiding by the state controller's recommendations. Okay. Questions on that chart? All right. So again, the fund balance, Proposition 3, thank you for the budget. Proposition 3 to have that $5 million for the new field and accessories, the roof on this building, and perimeter fencing. When we bring in our guards and the company before them, the first thing they say, your fences are a mess. And some of you know we have residents who have their gates opening onto the field, so they can walk right out onto the property. That is very convenient, but it's not smart these days, because we don't know what's going to happen. So we have to keep our kids safe. And, you parents entrust us to have them here. We have to keep them safest we can be for the kids. And I feel a lot safer right now. And you're going to see, as I've said in the past, you're going to come in fall, it's going to be a guard booth. There's going to be new fencing, there are going to be gates, the district, new perimeter fencing. The employees will have ID badges, new cameras. It's going to look very different, but it's all for the safety of your children. Okay, so that's my superintendent's message. Okay, so Lynn, at this time I'd like to turn over to Lynn Jordan.
Well, once again, it's my pleasure to tell you a little bit about the history of the bond project. Some of you have heard this story before. Well, I apologize. I've added some new little bits and pieces. Can you all hear me in the back? We're good? Okay. We started the bond project in March of 17. We figured, piece of cake, we've got this list of stuff, we could take care of this, we'll be done so that we can vote in May of 2018. Well, what we did was, we developed a charter by which the people who were going to work on the bond issue were going to conduct themselves and their research. We had letters of interest sent to us with biographies and so on, and chose people from a diverse bunch of backgrounds and talents and so on, so that we would have a good balance on the committee. Some of those people are here tonight. I'm not going to make them stand up, but on the other hand, I do want to thank them because they have put in long, long hours and much struggle from time to time. So what we started out with was a long list, and it ended up with a total cost of $60 million. And when we sat down the first time, you heard these gasps going around the room, and we said, that's a lot of money. And so we worked on it for many months. Many people took tours of all of the facilities to see where the issues were and what really needed to be done, what might be able to be put off, and so on. And we finally came up with something. We met with the administrators, we met with the architect, we just kept on meeting. We finally came up with something that we thought was a good collection of projects for a bond. So we took it to the Board of Education and we said, this is what we've come up with. And the Board of Education took a look at it, and basically they came back to us and said, not enough academic. You're doing a lot of buildings and grounds and fixie and stuff like this, but not enough academic. So then we went back and we met with administrators and directors, and they went back and did some research and came back with a new list. And we started working on that. And then February 14th happened. And although we had included a great deal of security measures in our bond, February 14th just blew the lid off. And we realized that this school district, this property, is wide open. And it's always been wide open, but it's not proper for these days and these times. So we went back to the drawing board. We met with a variety of vendors and people who would teach us about this, and we added more things. But the time was going along, and suddenly we realized, well, the track has, the football field and the track have really got to get fixed before they have bad readings, and we can't use them at all, and we won't be able to play football this fall. And the leaks in the ceiling in the high school are so awful that they need to be done immediately. And a bond issue takes time because you have to vote on it, then it has to go to the state for approval, and, you know, all that kind of thing. So that's why we did the capital projects. By moving money from the unappropriated fund balance into the capital projects with your approval, we were able to take care of those emergencies that really needed to be done, including the fencing around the property to limit access. And we also decided that we didn't want to be in this situation yet again sometime, so we started the Capital Reserve Fund, where we will put money every year so that if we have issues, we can fix issues. And one of the ones that was added in the capital projects was the roof in the high school because of the leaks. So that took care of some of the pressure that was on us to get this thing done quickly. Now we're at the point where we have created something that we think is good. It's not anything near $60 million, and it does not include everything that each one of us on the committee wanted. For example, I wanted a large center for performing arts behind the elementary school because we have no place for graduation except in the gym and the auditorium, and it's split off. And a lot of districts that have a center for performing arts make money off of renting those centers. So that was one of my dreams, a really great place for performing arts. And then I wanted to buy the Clark property, which is up for sale for $1 million, because I thought it might have use for us in the years to come. But they said, no, you can't have those things. And there are other things on the list that other people wanted that we just can't accommodate. But we want you to see tonight what we have done, where we have gotten to, what we had to eliminate. Can there be discussion about it? Yeah, there can be discussion about it. But this is, I apologize for the length of time it's taken us, but so many things have interfered in the development of this project. And we want to make sure that we get it right when you finally vote on it, because we don't want to have to be going back and tweaking it anymore. Any questions? Cool. I'd like to introduce you to Severio, who is our architect, and he's going to show you some neat pictures.
Okay, good evening. Thank you, Rosdale and Board of Education, for this opportunity to give you an update on the facility needs assessment program that we've been working on. Hopefully you can all hear me. If you can't hear me, just let me know and I'll speak a little bit louder. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit. Some of it's going to be a repeat of what you just heard. It's more of a little bit of a more formal or organized process by which we've gone by, but I'll go through it and put up with me if I'm repeating some of the stuff. What we call this is a facility needs assessment. And really, what is a facility needs assessment and why are school districts interested in looking at their facilities and developing this type of plan, which ultimately may result in a bond referendum for the capital improvement projects? Well, there are two really main reasons. One is obviously for school districts to protect their largest investment, which is their facilities, their buildings, their grounds. This is one of the largest investments that school districts have, so they look to keep those in proper working order, obviously to maintain the value of what those buildings are. There's also something from the State Education Department called the Code of Public School Buildings. And that Code of School Public Buildings does one thing. It charges the administration and Board of Education in making sure that school districts comply with something called, something called the Comprehensive Public School Safety Program. That school safety program makes sure that buildings are kept in a manner that is suitable for the educational process. So they make sure that buildings don't have leaky roofs, that they have HVAC systems and mechanical systems that operate properly to make sure that students have an opportunity to learn and to be in classroom settings that are conducive to that process. So they put that on the school district to make them responsible for having or developing this plan. The Comprehensive School Safety Plan consists of two things. One, they call it the Building Condition Survey, which has an acronym called BCS. That's something that you'll hear a little bit more throughout the process. And something called the Capital Plan. The Building Condition Survey is a format or an inspection that's been developed by the State Education Department. It has over 110 different informational items that a licensed professional, whether it be an architect or engineer, needs to go through each and every building and look at these 110 items. It asks the architects and the engineers to evaluate those systems, rate those systems, and ultimately give each building a building grade. There used to be annual visual inspections that were also done, but due to state cutbacks, they told school districts that they no longer needed to do or update this building condition survey every year. They could do it every 5 years. So that would put even more importance on those BCSs to be done properly, because you're really only getting a snapshot of these buildings every 5 years. A lot can happen in those 5 years. Everything is looked at in those buildings, everywhere from the HVAC, life and safety items, to code compliance, ADA accessibility. Like I said, it's a very comprehensive plan or program that's put together to make sure that each building is meeting that. At the end of that inspection, a capital plan is developed. That's taking a list of all of the items that the professionals have determined that need to be done, along with input from administrators and Board of Education, and they put together a capital plan. And that capital plan is a roadmap. It's a roadmap for the next 5 years for school districts to look at and prioritize the work that needs to be done. And the State Education Department expects that school districts look at that and that they follow that map as they're going through to make sure, again, that their buildings stay in a manner that is conducive to the process. They also want to make sure that school districts don't have issues where they need $20 million worth of work to be done and that they're not chipping away at that at a reasonable pace. So they ask the school districts to put together and to submit this capital plan to the State Education Department. And then every project that is submitted to SED for permitting is marked up against the capital plan to make sure that the district is following or addressing the needs that have been outlined in that plan. So what did the district do? We did something a little bit different than also doing that. They established a facilities committee or a charter, as was previously mentioned, and that was comprised of various board members, administrators, PTA representatives, community members, facility, athletic department people, and personnel, and obviously us, the district officers. The capital plan that had been prepared was cross-referenced with the previous building condition survey. Like I said, they're done every 5 years. So we went back and looked at 15 years of building condition surveys to look to make sure that projects that were on previous BCSs were included in this list that we were looking at. We also cross-referenced it with the district-wide energy performance contract that was completed about 2 years ago. That was a project that the district undertook to make buildings more efficient. There were energy performance programs and energy performance projects that were done that would help reduce the amount of energy being saved, and that was also cross-referenced with this capital plan. And the intent was really to make sure that we came up with a comprehensive plan that looked at all of these items that needed to be addressed, and so the committee would have something to look at and to digest. That updated document, as I just described it, that became the basis of discussion for the committee for the charter. That's what they started looking at. The charter was charged with actually evaluating the needs of the district, both from a facility, safety, security, technology, athletic, and educational standpoint. across the board completely. We wanted to make sure that the facility needs assessment looked at everything that the district would be looking for, or that whatever future needs would be coming up would also be addressed by this plan. There were ongoing meetings and walkthroughs with the facilities committee and the charter along with the faculty, and they're still being done to help define, reestablish, quantify, narrow down, come up with the best possible plan that ultimately will be presented to the Board of Education. The committee, like tonight, through public presentations and through committee forums, will obviously seek the input of the community as well as those people that are involved in it to make sure that the plan that we're putting forward really addresses all of the needs throughout the district. The final intent of this exercise, or this facility needs assessment program, is obviously to create a single document which addresses all of the district's needs, not only the current needs, but also those that are in the foreseeable future, along with district representative and district support, right? We need support to make sure that we're addressing the items that need to be addressed. And what's very important is that through consensus, the committee will present plans to the Board of Education for the proposed work, along with costing for the items that they've identified. And we're going to try to obviously build off of a majority of the existing infrastructure and to make sure that it's done with a fiscally sound plan, along with a schedule that's reasonably to accomplish. So consensus is the key word, because as was previously mentioned, not all of the items in the district were looked at, not all of the items were agreed on that need to be important, but we looked at them all, and through consensus, we're going to narrow that down to the best possible plan that we can present to the Board of Education. We identified 2 buckets of projects. We identified projects that were consistent throughout the district, meaning projects that were similar at each one of the buildings that needed to be done. They were also projects that either addressed life safety or had a health and safety impact on the buildings themselves. They fell into one bucket. And they consisted of site work, athletic fields, paving, drainage, sidewalks, and fencing. We also looked at security upgrades, which are security vestibules, cameras, intercoms, security film, student access card systems, and a central phone system. Again, things that were consistent throughout the district. Building envelope items. These are items that are typically on the exterior of buildings. It was roofing, masonry, windows, doors. All of these items we identified throughout the district that needed to be addressed at varying levels, but throughout all of the buildings. There were also interior finishes, interior doors, different than exterior doors. These are classroom doors, or doors to the main office or to the nurse's offices. Hardware, security hardware for those doors. Also flooring, ceilings, and locker replacements. We also looked at plumbing fixtures, another consistent theme throughout the district. There were student and faculty toilets, finishes, fixtures that needed to be replaced, again, all consistent throughout the district. We also looked at other interior upgrades like student lockers, library renovations, guidance suite conversions, the creations of STEM labs at the high school and middle school level. Those items also came up. Auditorium renovations, music practice rooms, culinary arts rooms, and again, upgrading science labs. Not at every building, obviously, but looking throughout the districts. These were common that we came and said needed to be addressed. HVAC upgrades. There was classroom air conditioning throughout the district. At each one of the classrooms became a theme that was looked at by the committee. Also gas conversions, establishing or completing the BMS, which is the building management system that was initially installed as part of the energy performance contract, needs to be completed and finished, and exhaust fans throughout the buildings. And then on the electrical side, there was electrical distribution, service upgrades, fire alarms, public address systems, master time clock systems, emergency generators, remote distribution panels, all things that, again, on the electrical side, was a common theme that needed to be upgraded throughout the district. On the athletics and ground side, there was the maintenance garage gas service. Currently, the existing garage does not have gas to it. Synthetic turf multipurpose field, the girls softball field upgrades, locker room renovations, and some traffic speed bumps. These were items that we identified that were consistent throughout the district, and again, similar. What did that all come to? Well, at the elementary school, it totaled about $4.4 million worth of work. At the middle school, about $7.5 million worth of work. And at the high school, at the middle school, 7.5, the high school also 7.5, and that district-wide athletics and grounds, somewhere around 5.4 million, for a total of about $24.9 million. This was the base work that we had identified, consistent throughout all the buildings, that needs to be done. We felt that this was the base of the scope of the service that could be done. However, there were additional comments. The committee also looked at many other items, and there were other upgrades that the committee looked at and also determined whether or not they needed to be done. And at the middle school, at the elementary school, the stage lighting was brought up for performances. They wanted to upgrade the stage lighting. Again, another thing that wasn't identified in the base, but something that was brought up as something that needed to be done. At the middle school, there were a few other items. We had additional faculty toilets and student toilets. They wanted to refurbish or expand the locker rooms at the middle school. And also looking to reconfigure the library at the middle school, creating a more secure entrance as you come into the building, relocating the guidance office and PPS into the library, and then relocating the library into the old guidance schools. So those were items they looked at. Totaled about another $4.1 million. At the elementary school, it was only about $45,000 more. At the high school, they also looked at gym flooring replacement, looking at the master time clock system, auditorium seating replacement, again, some additional toilets that needed to be done, exterior LED lighting, and a main office addition actually was even thought of in contemplating relocating the current office from where it is and actually building addition onto the high school to relocate that main entrance, again, in a way of addressing security by bringing that office closer to the front of the building would reduce the way somebody needed to get into the building, how far those people would get into the building. Keeping it closer to the entrance obviously allows us to give a little bit more security or be more secure. At the high school, they also looking at the trainer room, maybe doing renovations to the training room. The wood shop, adding some additional ventilation and a dust collection system. The prep rooms in between the science labs, looking at putting heating and air conditioning in those rooms, and then an orchestra room addition. Looking at maybe creating an addition where the existing, or where your current band room is, where there was an old rotunda, or it used to be an old amphitheater outside the building, looking to build out onto that portion of the building and create a new orchestra room. That totaled about another $6.6 million worth of work. On the athletic side, or the ground side, they looked at actually building a new maintenance garage, a new 6,500 square foot maintenance garage. The current maintenance garage at the middle school is cramped, really outdated, doesn't have a gas service, doesn't provide the district with what they need. They were looking to build an additional maintenance garage, almost $3 million, or a little over $3 million to do that project alone. They wanted to look at demolishing the existing barn. It's no longer weather tight. It really doesn't keep the items that are in the barn free from weather or rain. They were looking to actually demolish that barn. When we build, or if you had an opportunity to build a new maintenance facility, you could demolish the barn and get rid of that. We also looked, as mentioned before, an additional property purchase to the east of the school complex is a piece of residential property that they would look to purchase, about $1 million. They also look to add additional synthetic turf fields. We currently have one, as Mr. Brosdale indicated, in the capital project. We are replacing the synthetic turf on the main field, but there was also the thought of maybe we need additional synthetic turf fields to give the district flexibility, have more play space, more playing fields that would accommodate the tremendous amount of teams that you have here. So a way of, again, maybe increasing or being able to add that to the list. Over $1 million, $1.6 million more. There was also a look at replacing the girls' varsity softball field and turfing that field at a cost of around $655,000. And then also going and looking at the boys' varsity baseball field and synthetic turfing or replacing the natural grass and putting a synthetic turf field there, about another $700,000. And then ultimately they looked at actually adding another auxiliary gym to the district with the amount of athletic programs, spaces at a premium. There was actually the thought of creating a new 12,000 square foot auxiliary gym on the existing tennis courts at the high school. All of those items totaled about $15.8 million more that was looked at. Here are some photos, just to give you some perspective of some of the items that we looked at over at the elementary school. I talked about those envelope items, or those exterior items, you know, the doors, the exterior doors and hardware. You can see some examples of some of the current doors that are there. There's some masonry work around the columns that need to be addressed. There's some masonry work that needs to be done around the building. The masonry, the brick is starting to deteriorate. We're getting water infiltration in. So again, items that we would need to address. Windows, as we talked about, that was in that base list of projects that I identified. We had considered partial window replacements, not all the windows at every building, but partial window replacements where the windows are, the seals are broken and now they're no longer producing, or they're no longer thermally set. So we're having some issues with those. Again, some interior doors. You can see what the current interior classroom doors look like. It's a little dark, that picture, but the second door in is an interior typical classroom door. The public address and PA system, there's an example of a speaker, some carpeting and flooring, and then some examples of some of the outdated toilet fixtures. Here's an example on the far left. The boys' toilets have urinals go all the way down to the floor. That's no longer allowed by the health department. Urinals need to be mounted to the wall. You can no longer have them going all the way down to the floor, and they need to have partitions in between each one of them. You're no longer allowed to just have a bank of urinals. It's neither is it sanitary, but it's also not very private for people. But then you also have some sinks and lavatories that also need to be updated and replaced. At the middle school, again, I mentioned about some of those common items, windows. You can see it's a little hard to tell with the lower picture on the bottom. That shows one of the windows that the thermal seal is broken, and what actually happens is the window starts to fog over from the inside. So we would look to replace and update those windows. You can see the upper middle picture is a good example. It's a little hard to see, but there is some moss and mildew that's growing on the facade. That's obviously a result of water infiltration into the masonry, something that needs to be addressed. If it goes unaddressed or allows to continue like that, then obviously future deterioration will be happening to that masonry. So we want to address those items now. And there, the far right-hand picture is an example of your outdated old public address systems and master time clocks. So we would look to upgrade and replace those. At the middle school, also is an example of some of the student corridor lockers that we would look to replace. You can see they're in pretty poor shape. We have some ceilings that need to be addressed, whether they're from leaks in the water or just, roof leaks where water is infiltrating in or deteriorating the ceiling tiles. So we'd like to address that. Again, similar to all the buildings, the classroom doors really need to be upgraded for security reasons as well as for fire rating reasons. There's an example of some flooring, that's some cracked VCT flooring that you're seeing on the far right-hand side. And again, some pictures of existing toilet facilities that also need to be updated and upgraded. At the high school, the capital project does include replacing a majority of the roof. However, the capital project doesn't address all of the roofing, obviously for budgetary reasons, so we'd like to continue and replace the rest of the roof under if it is a bond, then that's the way we would go. But again, the roofing, you can see all of the seams are starting to fail and they need to be addressed. We have masonry issues, again, toilet facility issues. Some of the classrooms or the shop areas need to be addressed, as well as some of the gymnasium or locker room lockers also need to be done. Some examples of some science labs where we'd obviously look to generate or recreate new STEAM labs. That's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So we would look to upgrade those science labs. So you can see some examples of the current casework and configuration of those labs. Again, corridor doors, asphalt paving, and again, your outdated public address and master plan process. So we've talked about and shown a lot of work that needs to be done. 24.9 million in that base project, and probably another $35 million of those other items that the committee and facility was looking at. So how do you get all of that stuff done? If you look at typical capital facilities or capital programs in districts, they may allocate maybe $1 million. If you have $50 million worth of work that needs to be done, it'll take you 50 years to get to do all of that work. By that time, you'll have $50 million of other work that needs to be done. So we have to develop a fiscally sound plan of how to do it. And typically that looks at different funding sources, one of which is bonding. And the benefit to a bond is that you're able to go out through public approval, to go out and borrow money to do capital improvements. And you're able to do quite a few or a lot of those capital improvements over a relatively short period because you borrow that money and then pay that money back. There's also the capital reserve or the capital line in the budget, which is something that we've done this year by transferring money into that capital reserve. Gave us the ability to handle about $5 million worth of capital projects that are going to be going on this summer and into this fall. So there's also a way of looking at it that way. And then the potential of another energy performance contract. Maybe looking at a second phase of energy performance contracts in a way of paying for some of the mechanical upgrades that we were looking to do or some of the other capital improvement projects. So really, the facility needs assessment is a culmination of looking at all of the items that need to be done, coming up with a plan and ultimately presenting it to the Board of Education for approval, and then identifying potential funding sources for getting that work done. That's where we are right now with the process. Any questions?
Severio, not a question, but for a comment for those who have not been involved in hearing all this news and information. By going out to fund it through a bond, we would be eligible for state aid, and over time, we would get a good chunk of that money back through state aid.
Yes, the district is in a good position in that, I'm not sure, is it 76%? 78%. The school district receives 78% building aid. And on capital improvement projects, what that means is for every dollar that's spent, the state education department or the state will reimburse the district 78 cents. There's also building aid which is allowed to be given, and that's given over a 15-year period. So the state education department would look at the projects, would identify what the life expectancy of those projects are, and then they give that money back to the district over 15 years. So building aid is obviously something that we would be very interested in, and also making sure that the projects are grouped together to maximize that building aid. And an example of that is where you have site work, which is typically not eligible for building aid by the state education department. If coupled with a capital improvement that increases the infrastructure or improves the infrastructure within a building, would be eligible for building aid. So we would look to whatever projects we decide on that final list, we would look to group those projects to maximize building aid so the district would get hopefully as much of that 78% as they possibly can. Now, some projects are prorated where they don't receive full building aid, the full 78%, but when you couple that together, you would think that about, or we have estimated about 85 to 90% of the projects would be eligible for the full 78%, and then there would be a variance of the remaining projects would be at some building aid ratio from there. But it's very important to make sure that the building aid is captured because that's money back into the district's pocket to help offset the bond cost or the payment. Think of it as a loan that you borrow from the bank. You got to pay that bank back. You can then use that building aid to offset that payment that you're giving back to the bank. So it's a way of making those payments utilizing what the district is entitled to. And 78% is a very good number. Any other questions? Sorry?
Do we have a handout?
Oh, I'm sorry, we do have a handout. I didn't know if you wanted it at the front or if, but the handout that we've got tonight is a list of all of the projects that I had spoke about, listed in two categories. So I'll just show you on this. When you look at the sheet, you'll see the front of the sheet includes those base items that we talked about, the total, the 24.9 million. And then when you look at the back of the sheet, are those other projects that we considered or are on the list but haven't made a determination as to what the final list is going to look like. So you have the base and then you have the other items that we're looking at. I guess I'll leave them here that they can come and pick up the one. Any other questions? Couldn't have done that good of a job. Couldn't have. No? All right, thank you for the opportunity to get us. Thank you.
Otherwise, we'll have an opportunity at the end of the agenda to ask a question that's not related to the agenda. So that said, do we have anyone wants to speak? Fred, hi.
Hello. Item number, letter N, commercial irrigation. For the installation of 15 heads for $2,000. I'm kind of wondering how that cost was arrived at, because based on my own experience with having sprinkler heads replaced, at a cost of $133 per head seems exorbitant.
I'm guessing that
That was the bidder, that's what they did.
the lowest responsible bidder.
That was the lowest responsible bidder.
I mean, it's $133 a head seems completely out of whack when my company, I understand there's some different rules, but I get charged $45 a head, and it seems somebody's trying to take us for a ride. I would ask that be gone back and looked at again for somebody else that can do it at a more reasonable rate.
So the other half of it, the winterization for 109 zones,
Yes, but that's a separate line item.
the cost seems very cheap.
Yeah.
I don't know about
Zones.
that. I mean, the time clock doesn't seem too out of whack. The hourly rate, $75, seems okay. But, I mean, if they're trying to offset one cost with the other cost, it should be in line and representing the true cost of that activity. I think the $2,000 seems completely out of balance for a reasonable rate.
Linda will check with Mr. Ray and we should get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for pointing that out. Are there any other questions having to do with the agenda? Okay, Brett.
For the audit, letter P, were there any substantial changes to the corrective action plan that are new? Just to continue spending the,
Fund balance being spent there.
okay, so that's basically the same as it's been for the last few years. Yes?
Correct.
Okay. And then, it's not listed here, but it was in Mr. Brosdale's presentation of the field repairs. For the visitor bleachers, are they going to be replaced as well, the smaller side that's closer to the high school?
The bleachers, yes.
Visitors.
Visitors, bleachers, no, they're not replaced, right? No.
Those are not currently ADA compliant, I believe?
We're actually looking at those bleachers because with the baseball field, slam that stuff field, I can't tell you how many will cost because male and female I watched where the teams on jeopardy being hit by a foul ball. So we actually, we asked them out, people sit there.
It's a situation where the school district, from the security point of view, has had a lot of problems with things right behind the benches. It's become an issue. And I know that Scott, is thinking about
My left.
just like lifting, just for that aspect.
I couldn't really hear you.
Okay, what he was saying is, in addition to the danger of foul balls in baseball field, a lot of fan problems, they're right behind the benches, and anything they say can be heard, and there are sometimes when parents aren't always polite. So it'll alleviate a few problems if we actually just remove them,
Okay,
and they can sit in the large bleachers.
okay. Just from an access perspective, having those bleachers be close to the parking lot and be ADA compliant would help people in the community. So it would be really nice to have bleachers that are closer to the parking lot instead of having to walk all the way around to the main bleachers. For somebody that's mobility impaired, that can be a very long walk and it can be a problem.
The changes to the main bleachers. They'll be larger, but and ADA compliant. What really didn't show on the picture is the changes to the surrounding area will include a drop-off pull-in so that someone wants to drop a guest off who may not want to walk all the way up the hill from the parking lot. Currently, we just have a thoroughfare that exists and people stop. And now traffic stops, or kids are getting out of the car. So that whole area is being changed other than the sponsor bricks. But a lot of that is being changed out to accommodate access, traffic, pedestrian drop-off, things like that I think would address the need for a disabled member of our community, or someone frankly doesn't want to walk that far, to get off, and it also addresses the safety of the kids who get dropped off for a game as a spectator.
Yeah, I would just ask that as those plans are being finalized, consider that there are people in the community who are parents that would need to park in the handicapped area next to the field. And if they have to go all the way around, it's a pretty long walk for somebody who doesn't have good stamina and has a medical condition, to go all the way around to sit in the bleachers. If there's a way to accommodate them by having a bleacher on the closer side of the parking lot, would be very helpful.
Any others? All right, so we granted tenure to two candidates, so we'll skip to the second page. And resignations. Ed?
Resignation, Brian Paddleford. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby accepts the resignation of Brian Paddleford, custodial worker 1, effective May 26, 2018.
I second.
Thank you, Pete. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Carrie?
Sure. Number 2, leave of absence. Carrie Herman. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the leave of absence request of Carrie Herman, ELA teacher for the 2018-19 school year.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Keith, part-time position?
Number 3, part-time position, Sarah Marceau. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the part-time week 6 position requested Sarah Marceau, music teacher for the 2018-19 school year.
Second?
Thank you, Lynn. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Appointments instructional, Lynn?
ELA teacher, Victoria DiPierno. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following probationary appointment. Victoria DiPierno, August 29th, 2018. Expirational appointment August 28th, 2021. 1 year UREMA credit. Area English, Step B, MA, certification initial.
Thank you, Lynn.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Bob, social studies?
Social Studies, Sylvia Frank Chase. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, Board of Education hereby approves the following probationary appointment. Sylvia Franchise, August 29, 2018 to August 28, 2021. Social Studies Step 2 MA Certification Professional.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Mike, social studies teacher?
Hey, just Sylvia's here this evening. Sylvia on the way to the board.
Hi, Sylvia. Welcome aboard.
Sylvia comes to us from Eastport, South Manor. Not Bayport. Bayport, that's the next cabin. Bayport. And their loss is our gain. And she's an AP instructor and brings AP research to us which we wanted to add to our curriculum for quite some time. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Is Victoria here?
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations, Mom.
Congratulations to the family.
And Victoria did a leave, and this year we all came in to observe her, to see how good she was, and she was really good.
Thank you.
And she has now a probationary spot. You earned it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Social studies teacher, Jenna Rickard, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following probationary appointment. Jenna Rickard, effective August 29th, 2018 through August 28th, 2021, in the area of social studies, step AMA, and that is a professional certification.
Second? Thank you, Lynn. Is Janet? No? Okay. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Ed? Special ed?
Special education teacher Sarah Faratik. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following probationary appointment for Sarah Faratik, August 29th, 2018 through August 28th, 2021 in the area of special education, 7 through 12 for English and social studies, step A, MA plus 30, professional.
And Sarah comes to us with a second master's degree in literacy and becomes a valuable player in our secondary field.
Any other comments? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Carried, ELA, leave.
ELA teacher leave replacement position. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following leave replacement position. Joseph Barico, August 29th, 2018, expiration of appointment is June 26th, 2019, in the area of ELA, step A, MA, and his certification status is negotiable.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. P, appointments non-instructional.
D, appointments non-instructional, custodial employees, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following appointments as listed.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? I will abstain. I know someone on the list. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Carried.
Where's that resolution?
Right now. List coaches.
Coaches, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following coaches for the 2018-19 school year. And the list goes on and on.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed?
Maureen, please denote my abstention on the list.
That's true.
So no, okay, six up. All right, thanks, Steve. All right.
Action items.
Okay. Bob?
Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education has no objections to the following special education recommendations and approves the authorizations for the funds to implement the special education programs and services consistent with such as listed.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, Mike, summer school.
Summer school, middle school, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Ed hereby authorizes a summer school program for grades 7 and 8, math and ELA, and appoints the following persons to fill the necessary positions. The program will be held Monday through Thursday, July 2 through August 10th, 2018. Compensation will be as per the teacher's contract for instructional and on a prorated basis for non-instructional positions as listed.
Thank you, Mike.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Ed Law, Ed.
Action items, business, LR. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves a maximum of $500,000 appropriation be expended from the LR fund to satisfy terminal payments due retiring district employees.
Second?
Thank you, Lynn. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Carrie, Heather.
Sure. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following motion. Shall I read? As listed. As listed.
Any comments? Oops.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Second. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Peter, reserve.
C, NYSERDA's reserve contribution. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following motion as listed.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Lynn, board meeting dates, please?
Board meeting dates. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby designates the following dates as regular meetings of the Board of Education for the 2018-19 school year.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Bob, Rio?
2019 reorg meeting date resolved upon the recommendations of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby designates Monday, July 1st, 2019 as the date of the 2019-2020 reorganization meeting.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Mike, breakfast, lunch.
Sure, 2018-19 breakfast and lunch prices resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following breakfast and lunch prices for the 2018-19 school year as follows. The elementary school, $2.10, the middle school, $2.20, and the high school, $2.20.
That's first breakfast.
The next page.
Okay, we'll go to the next page, and the lunch at the elementary school for $3, middle school for $3.10, and the high school for $3.10 as well.
Thank you, Mike.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? Please. All right, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Ed, out-of-district late bus.
Out-of-district late bus transportation. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby extends the out-of-district late bus service transportation contract for the 2018-19 school year to Acme Bus Corporation at the May 2018 Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, New York, northeastern New Jersey area.
Thank you, Ed.
Second.
Thank you, Pete. Any comments? In favor? Opposed? Carried. Carried. Transportation.
Sure. H, district transportation. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby extends the regular transportation, occupational education transportation, in-district handicap transportation, non-public transportation, special education transportation, field trips and athletic trips contracts for the 2018-19 school year with first student at a maximum May 2018 Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, New York, northeastern New Jersey area.
Carried. Thank you, Mike. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Pete, destruction.
I, destruction of ballots, destruction of cast ballots. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following motion as listed.
Pete?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Lynn, obsolete equipment.
Yep. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby declares the following items as obsolete and further authorizes disposal as listed. And it goes on to the next page.
I'll I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Lunch contracts up.
Lunch contract resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby extends the contract for school lunch with Whitson School Nutrition Corporation for the 2018-19 school year and an increase of the May 2018 Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, New York, Northeast, and New Jersey area.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Mike, athletic training?
Athletic Training Services, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves PPT Management LLC for athletic training services for the 2018-19 school year at the rate of $33,600.
Thank you, Mike.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments?
And this is the same as last year?
Yes. Yes, last year.
So we have the same cost as last year, and this is the outside athletic trainers in our own facility during each of our games.
Everybody seems very satisfied with it, so we're very fortunate. Any other comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Ed, external auditor.
External auditor, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby awards the bid for external auditor to Cullen and Danowski LLP as listed.
Second. Thank you, Mike. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Linda, should we hold off on that? Okay, we're going to
Table.
table commercial
Move to table N.
I'll
Thank
second
you,
that.
Ed. Thank you, Bob. Any comments? Favor? Opposed? Carried to table. Further information. Carried, memorandum of agreement.
Sure. Memorandum of Agreement, Non-Instructional Association. Resolved upon the recommendation of the Superintendent, Board of Education hereby ratifies the memorandum of agreement dated May 29, 2018, between the Mount Sinai CSEA unit and the Board of Education, and authorizes the Board President Lynn Capabianco to execute said agreement.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And then Pete, state audit?
P, State Audit, Financial Condition Management Audit. Resolved upon the recommendation of the Superintendent, Board of Education hereby accepts the State Controller's Financial Condition Management Audit for the years 2014 through 2016-17 and approves the 5-year corrective action plan established in response to said audit report.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone second? Okay, so that will be up on the website this week, so if you want to have a closer look at it, you can see it then. Any other comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, this is the part of our agenda where you may ask us pretty much any kind of question that has been on your mind.
Actually, regarding the agenda, just want clarification for item E, is that meant to be for next month or for 13 months from now?
It's hard to hear you.
Item E, that you went through, is that meant to be for next month or is that meant to be for 13 months from now?
13 months.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
We will throw in the curtains for the
Lynn?
Yes.
Monica?
I'm still looking for it. Hi, Monica.
Question, so what's next with the bond project? We had the presentation tonight, so what is the next step?
July meeting. So where you want to describe July?
What's in July?
The bond.
If July's agenda, we'll make another presentation, obviously with a refined list, because we'll continue to refine that list and come up with other alternates or other options that the community may put forward, and then we'll present that refined list in July.
Okay, so this list that was handed out tonight is not final.
It's not final, it's an ongoing list that we
We'll be meeting in the fall as well.
Okay.
For the presentation.
If I could add to that, Monica, so this is the last meeting of the school year. July 1 starts the new calendar year. People are on summer vacation. We were hoping we would get a good turnout. the bond advisory committee members, many of you are here, thank you for coming. Some of our new teachers have come, thank you. If I pull out the bond advisory committee members and the new teachers and their families, we probably have about 3 or 4 people here, the same as who normally come to our meetings. So thank you to you, but one of the things we want to do as a board is, this is obviously a major undertaking. The board was adamant about making sure we got community input before we voted on this to decide what specifically was going to be on there. And unfortunately, the first meeting didn't draw as many people as we'd like, and I would imagine that in the summer, it would probably be even less. We could be sitting here by ourselves. Yes, but I think what's important is for people to start getting the message out, coming to these meetings, because we're your board, we're your elected Board of Education, and we have to vote on a final itemized list of what will go in that bond. And frankly, it's tough to do that with just a small group coming. We don't really get a true sense of what the community is willing to accept and what they want to see going forward, in addition to what the Bond Advisory Committee has already recommended. So again, I know many of you report back, put some of these things on Facebook, but it's important to get community feedback. We'll be doing more. We'll be going to meetings. We'll be speaking here at our board meetings, but we may also, Brad, start coming to some of the civic. We want to get this word out and kind of get feedback. So again, if you can help us, that's obviously a big part of what we need.
Is it possible to post some of the ideas online so people can see it more in depth?
Sure.
Just so they can see when they're at home, they don't know what that paper says. Look at it a little more carefully, and maybe provide feedback through emails or something like that.
One of the important things on the bond is it's an authorization to take out a loan. And we would seek loans for various projects up to a certain amount. And what tonight Severio showed us was some of the base amounts that are in the necessary category and some additional ideas that have been presented by the Bond Advisory Committee and discussed in the board meetings, but would need the community to talk to us because we're going to be taking this loan. That loan will have to be paid back with interest. The more time we take, interest, as you read in the paper, is going up. The cost to the community will increase, and the cost could be an amount that will affect your home taxes. That's the bottom line. That's as blunt as I can put it. That in budget and bond, this will affect your tax bill. And that's something that you have to give us input. Whether you're viewing this by camera or coming in July or in the fall, so that when we as a board vote, we've done so with as much input from the community as possible. That's why it's so important. These things have to be addressed by the community so we have the right guidance, so that when next May or the Mays thereafter you see your tax bill, you'll see this on your tax bill.
So there is next month when you're going to show cost per household approximately based on
Yeah, as we finalize that scope, then we'll have what the average cost per assessed value of the home would be, and then you could look at, we'll have other options as far as what incremental increases would also be. So whether it's every 2 million or 5 million thereafter, we'll have those numbers also. So you'll be able to see what those sort of have-needed items are, what that's going to cost, and then what every other increment is thereafter.
Great. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, I have any more questions?
I think I got one.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Question about middle school exam schedule. So my understanding is that in past years, for final exams, when students took their exam in the morning, they could be dismissed. And that is still the case for Regents exams. Once they take their their tests in 7th and 8th grade, they can leave. My understanding is that was changed this year so that once the kids are done taking their test for 7th and 8th grade, they have to stay for the rest of the day but in much abbreviated class schedules, only about 20 minutes.
So your question is why that changed?
Why that change and what educational benefit are they getting from 20 minutes?
New York State required hours, days and hours. They broke it down to hours, and we had to meet that demand. Was it 900? Elementary, 990 secondary?
Yeah.
You had to comply. We had to meet extensively to figure out what things had to be changed. Half days are disappearing. It's a New York State mandate. You have to comply. It's not necessarily middle school design.
I'll also say, having a child in the 7th grade, today was the first of 4 finals this week. There are 2 next week. After that first 2 hours, when she takes the final, she does go to classes. They are abbreviated, but the teachers are reviewing with her, even if it's for 20 minutes, the next day's final. So she's been given study guides and different things to take home. And now she took a math final today, but now she's going back to ELA, science, and she's reviewing. Hey, even if it's 20 minutes, make sure you look at this, look at that. So I'll tell you, it's helped her. It's only 20 minutes, but like Gordon said, the state mandate says that we must have certain hours and days, so we can't just cut them, and they're trying to make the most of it so the students are prepared for the next day's final and the following days, etc.
Just in general, I know I've said it to the board before, I'm getting really frustrated with the length of the school year. I think next year it's going to what, June 26th?
It goes longer.
But that is not something
They
that
do.
we don't control that.
You can write the state and the new commissioner and tell them.
Next
Senator
year.
Allen would love to hear it.
Well, it just confuses me because I have a friend that lives in Smithtown, and their high schooler, their instructional classes were done last week. There's no more instruction. So,
Same for us on Friday.
what's that?
Pretty much Thursday was the last day.
Okay. And it keeps stretching and stretching, and it's the erosion of valuable summer, which I think has a definite value for kids to have that time to pursue other interests. And I would ask the board in whatever capacity you can to try to preserve that time for kids to have some vacation, do some family things, do other things outside of academics. I think that's worth preserving and fighting for.
Brad, our choice is limited by the Regents exam. All the Regents are given. The last one, which I think is a cruel process, that the physics exam is the last one that sometimes can be, the day of the prom or the day before graduation. So the last 2 weeks are calculated based on 2 different things. The Regents exams and their schedule, and that's posted. You can see where all the Regents are. And when we start our school year, we can adjust June to a small degree because of the Regents exams and move it a little bit towards starting earlier, but you only get a day or 2 depending on when the physics exam is. And that may affect your time off during the middle of the year, but your end date is pretty much set a day or 2 off from whatever calendar choice you select. And that's the definition that's given to us as a choice, period. And it's a defined number. They have now added to that, and I like the idea of what the teachers are doing, and I applaud them for using it for review, but the hours in class are now being defined, and you have to have a certain number of hours, regardless of what holiday, what is observed in your particular district, and the exams on either end, your start and end. It's a defined process. It is absent the state education changing it. It's what we get.
We were notified that next year, we end on that last Wednesday, which is complicated things for every district. Graduation, when you hold that? Wednesday night, when are you gonna have your prom?
But he
Gone
gets
almost a
a year.
week longer, and you're right. But we've written letters of protest, they've decided to do it. It's gonna reflect, we have a decision to make, I think we will talk about it, when we'll have the prom and graduation next year. It won't be on a Saturday, it's gonna be early. So it's out of our control. There are many things that the state's doing right now that we don't agree with.
I know there's a lot of things about our education system in this state that are out of your control and then they're inflicted on us. That's one of the things that just seems just nuts, and it seems like there should be a better way to do it.
We agree.
Get out and vote for governor.
Okay. Madam Chair?
Yes.
And Mullen. This evening is Ms. Capabianco's last official public meeting. She is retiring as president, and she and I have had a very interesting history. We do not always agree, but we have learned how to work together. Starbucks is a great equalizer, and we get our coffee and we sit down and we can change the world. So, Lynn?
Take a moment just to say a couple more words. I don't know that I can beat that. Lynn and I always don't agree either, so there's something in common. Yes, I did not get flowers.
Not agreeing, but learning to work together is what's important.
Lynn is retiring for the second time. She has been a staple in the community with her family. You and Carrie have raised 3 great boys who have graduated, passed through the school, and now 2 are out of college and 1 is starting his college career. You have served the district, being an employee here, and you did a wonderful job. And then when most people would retire, you decided to come back and do this stuff for free. So, on behalf of the entire board, Linda and Maureen, we want to say thank you for everything. We got your little gift certificate to your favorite restaurants. You can take the whole family out. 5th season. So thank you.
Well, it is my last meeting on this side of the podium, but I'll be back, as Arnold once said. And I wrote some things down because I knew I wouldn't be able to remember them. But it's really been an honor and a privilege for me to serve on this Board of Education for the past 6 years. So in 2012, when I was first elected to the board, on that same day, the budget did not pass. And it was the year the state enacted a 2% tax cap, and the year the district sought to pierce the cap, but it did not succeed. It was the same year we didn't have any night lights because the lighting on the field was so expensive and cuts had to be made. A year several our athletic teams were cut, and I thought to myself, oh boy, we have some work to do. But since that year, I'm proud to say we have come a long way. The board has maintained and in many cases added to our instructional programs as well as our buildings and grounds. We added full-day kindergarten. We added a second librarian to the district. We added AP courses and electives. We restored BOCES back. We brought in Columbia Reading and Writing, successfully negotiated 3 bargaining units, created district goals and objectives that everybody hated me for, and have a pretty rigorous structure right now for hiring and getting tenure to our teachers. We built new beautiful tennis courts. We've added many layers of security to our buildings, including 4 recently hired armed guards, and have a major capital project, thanks to the approval of this community, ready to launch. Under Mr. Brosdale's leadership, as well as our district and building administrators, we have forged a commitment to strive for excellence academically, athletically, and in the arts. We're now live on Facebook, bringing our meetings into the homes of hundreds of families each month. and we have night games again under the lights. I thank each of my fellow board members for their tireless work on behalf of this community. While our conversations and debates are often robust, I have learned a long time ago that what brings us together is stronger than what pulls us apart. So last week, on a night like tonight, I was taking an evening walk and I entered the school grounds as I often do, and I was in awe of this campus. It was like somebody set it up for me saying, "Goodbye, Lynn." So as I'm walking around in the back of the elementary school, there was soccer going on and a baseball game going on. And then I came around to the middle of the middle school and the elementary school, and there's a lacrosse game going on. And as I go further, there's a baseball game on the JV field. And then the turf was abuzz with people running and walking and training. And then there was a pickup game of basketball going on the side. But the most interesting part was as I came, I'm trying to get my balance, on the other side of the school, in the little U between the library and 300 wing, there was an outdoor concert going on. I mean, I don't know who planned it, but there were singers, they were harmonizing, there were people sitting on the grassy area, and it was just beautiful. And I thought to myself, life is good, and how lucky are we to live and learn in this community. So, as I leave, I know your Board of Education will continue its good work for the good of our students and community, but there's always work to be done. And if I may, a few items on my wish list I'd like to leave the board for consideration is 1, to create a full-time science research program at the high school, 2, to add a robotics club to our extracurricular, and 3, I've been saying this one for 6 years, to restore the 3rd librarian to the district so that each school can be served by a full-time certified library media specialist. That's it. Again, thank you for the privilege. It's been quite a journey for me. I turn the torch over to you, Steve, so welcome aboard. Thank you, everyone.